Right, the show's yours.
Fantastic.
Right, folks, the show's on.
Okay, so the basic idea behind this pattern is that it's a highly modifiable heptageniid. Heptageniids, being stout crawlers, hang around right on the bottom of your watercourse. They tend to hang around in the riffles, not necessarily the very fast water, but still in fairly fast currents. So you need something to really get it down there. They've got very prominent legs, very, very prominent legs. The downside to that is it obviously creates quite a bit of drag on the fly, so it's difficult to then get it down. So this fly may seem overweighted, but it's actually just by virtue of the pattern that you have to put so much weight into it. The other idea behind it is that it's quite modifiable, so you can really change it up dependent on your situation. The basic premise is either a size 12 or a size 14 with an oversized tungsten bead. I tend to go with a darker bead because when heptageniids emerge, their heads actually get quite a lot darker. It's one of the distinct triggers that you find in them. So yeah, that's essentially the premise behind it. So to start off, I tie barbless, but you can always just debarb to make things easier. Your thread color isn't really that important, but I use quite a bright color to distinguish my flies that I incorporate lead in, and then I use a subdued color when I exclude lead from it. So it gives me an easy idea on what I'm actually fishing with. But yeah, we start off with the bead on the hook, pop your thread in there. If you want to include lead, you then include lead behind in the thorax here. Let's just get there.
So you got tungsten bead and lead.
That's correct. It's really, the idea was to use this as a control fly that actually is still a bit of a fish taker. And it's actually turned out to be quite a devastating little pattern for me. I find even in waters where baetis are a very prominent species, they'll still more often than not take the heptageniid. So you'll see I don't use too much. I just trap it in place there. Break off my excess. Okay, and just work back to the tail. I just build up a little bit of a thread base on the tail so that you get a nice flaring on your tail fibers. I then tie in probably about 10 or 12 CDL fibers. I like CDL because of the variegation on the fibers themselves, but really pretty much anything works. You can also use water mongoose at a stretch, but I find that it seems to be a little bit too thick for my liking, so I just tend to go with this.
How many have you got in there, Mark, roughly?
It's probably about 10 or 12. Okay, so I tend to have it about the length of the hook shank. That seems to keep the proportions fairly in key. Just nip off the excess. We then just incorporate our ribbing. I just use silver wire, but you can really use whatever you like. I like the silver because it, to a degree, imitates a bit of a gas bubble forming on the fly itself. So if you do start to swing it a bit, it actually works in your favor. Let's get that out the way. For the abdomen, I just used squirrel underfur. You can pretty much see there's quite a lot of variegation on it, which is also what I like for the guard hairs. It's very much an impressionistic pattern, so try and go as buggy as you can and just have fun with it, really. But just very lightly, well, reasonably lightly dub your thread. I've actually gone way overboard there. Okay, I do one turn of my silver wire just around, and then one under the base just to help with the flaring of the tail. And then we just carry on with ribbing the thorax. Sorry, the abdomen. Okay, I then incorporate a bit of saltwater flash, or I use just flashback. Give it a bit of a stretch first, because then it goes a nice purple color. I don't know if you can see that at all. You get quite a bit of a UV sheen to it. Oh.
So is this the wing case?
That's correct.
Good thing you're not seeing this sort of projector. You can see all your big mistakes.
I'm sure it looks terrifying. But the fish don't seem to mind. I originally wanted to call this fly a steri stumpy, because my thinking was that the fish take it to stop it from breeding. But when it actually turned out to be quite a fish taker, I then stuck with Super M. Okay, I then take out just guard hairs from the squirrel. You can see I just try and pick out the underfur to a degree. And then just quite loosely just twist it around. You see, it's a hell of a mess actually.
Bird's nest.
But that's really what you actually want in the fly. Oh hell. You see, it really is quite a scraggly looking chap. And just incorporate your wing case.
You intentionally leave the back end, especially when using a coloured.
Yes, you'll see I keep that red there. It's also just to determine that I've got lead in it.
Under the tail.
I use that as my own little indication, but it does definitely function as a trigger. I use silk thread, so it goes quite a bit darker in the water itself. Okay, for your legs, I just use a fairly small piece of just silly rubber or silly legs. Just cut it in half, pop it on either side of the fly, and just trap it once, twice, and then just position those legs to either side of the fly.
So it's right behind the beak.
It's literally right behind the bead. The idea being that if you don't actually want a Heptageniidae, you can then just nip these out as needed, or just pull them out completely. Okay, then just to sort of accentuate the gas bubble as they start to emerge, I then just incorporate a bit of CDC on the collar. It also helps with really allowing you to verify or adjust the weighting of the fly. So you can pick out your CDC collar, and you can pick out your rubber legs if you really need a bomb to get down, or grease up your CDC collar and it floats a bit higher in the water column. I use a type 2 CDC feather. Your type 2s have got quite long fibers at the bottom, so I just strip your longer fibers off. And then much the same story, just very loosely just wrapped around. Stroke back the legs, incorporate your collar, just pinch off some of the excess, and then you can actually just tie off, because the rest of the work is then scissor work. Ooh.
Swivel it around so we can see the lights. No, I was meaning
Oh, sorry.
rotate it.
There we go.
Just rotate it.
There we go. Okay, so you see that's what I'm ending up with on the top there.
Okay.
Just get his legs nice there. I've actually pulled these the wrong way around. And then you just trim to size.
So short legs.
The legs are quite short. It's just so that it wiggles a little bit in the water, and it just accentuates it. But that, in essence, is really the fly. It doesn't look like much, but
Fish like it.
the fish definitely do like it. So I can't complain much.
And how would you fish it?
I very much fish it as my control fly. So I'll have it as pretty much my dropper within a lightly weighted point above it. You can fish it on its own, but I very much find fishing it in tandem within a lightly weighted little nymph behind it seems to, or above it, seems to work beautifully. And then, like I said, if you want to, you can then just pick out your legs like that,
No, don't do that.
pick out your collar, and there we go. You've got something that can really just get down if need be. So, no, well, now I'll do them properly.
What would you use as point fly
Yeah, it works well.
Another thing that
One without lead in it.
is that these things, when they hatch, they don't hatch like your baiters, mayflies, that swims to the surface. They first migrate
That's
to
it.
the softer. They live in very fast currents. Then they migrate to the side of the stream, or they migrate to where to the sacks behind big boulders. And they all migrate there. From there, they hatch. We don't really know how they hatch yet. They either crawl out, but we've never seen the shot, or they actually start hatching underwater and then just pop up. So the fish never eat them like they would eat mayflies doing a normal mayfly hatch. They always hunt for them on the bottom. And that's why this thing's got to be so heavily weighted, because that's
Exactly
really
it.
where the nymphs are. And they are, when they swim like that, those legs that he's tying, that's why it's so important. They got these really stout legs, it sits out like that. If they lose their grip, they actually arch their backs up and they look like a scorpion. And they've got these legs hanging out the side. And that's why he puts those rubber legs, because it's a really important trick. If you get that profile of the spoon, there's huge legs sticking out like this. Compared to the rest of the body. But when they're going, that's what they eat. You probably have two.
What sizes would you fish this?
I typically fish a 14 and a 16. They do get bigger than that, but those are definitely your most prominent heptageniids. They look, if you're picking up quite a few rocks, they more often than not look quite a bit like stoneflies. But obviously the single biggest differentiating factor is the stoneflies having two very distinct, quite stout tails. These have obviously got your finer tail filaments. There we go, there's the collar again, incorporated with the legs.
Try that on a scut.
And that's pretty much it. Yeah, it works beautifully on the scud as well.
Okay.
Herman, when you saw the materials,
Guys, just about the materials.